Have you ever felt like true peace is always just out of reach? Like, no matter how hard you try to relax or enjoy the moment, something inside keeps pulling you back. Well, you're not alone. The truth is, there are certain habits that most people don't even realize they have, yet they're sabotaging the peace you're seeking so deeply. Now, imagine this. You finally take some time to relax. Maybe you're in a quiet place, away from the daily rush, but your mind just won't stop. Repetitive thoughts, regrets, self-criticism. It's as if something is pulling you back into an invisible prison. And believe me, as long as these habits are part of your life, true peace will remain an empty promise. And do you know what's even worse? These habits grow stronger over time, creating a barrier that keeps you from truly enjoying each moment. The feeling of restlessness and dissatisfaction only increases. But don't worry, it doesn't have to stay that way forever. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to identify these 7 habits and, most importantly, how to let go of them once and for all. Because until you break free from them, peace will continue to slip away. So, if you're tired of feeling stuck in constant unease and want to let life truly flow, stay with me. Today, you're going to discover the path to a peace that's genuinely yours. And now, let's dive into the first habit. But before we start, make sure to check if you're already subscribed to the channel. This way, you won't miss upcoming videos in this series of content that will help you get to know yourself better and find the peace you've been searching for. Let's do this together. First habit: attachment to specific outcomes. Imagine you plant a tree in your garden. You water it, nurture it, add fertilizer, and expect it to grow and bear fruit exactly as you envisioned. But over time, the tree grows in its own way. Maybe it takes longer than you expected, or even produces a different kind of fruit than you had planned. In that moment, you might feel frustrated, thinking something went wrong because you had a fixed idea of what should have happened. This example illustrates how attachment to specific outcomes can lead to suffering. When we expect everything to go exactly as planned, life, with all its surprises, can feel disappointing. Much like a gardener who wants all his plants to bloom in a specific way, we suffer when things don't go according to our script. This attachment creates a resistance that blinds us to the beauty each situation has to offer. Now, imagine if the gardener took care of his garden with love, but without expecting a precise outcome. He does his best, accepting that some plants might grow faster, others slower, and that the garden has its own natural beauty. This way, instead of feeling frustrated, he experiences gratitude for whatever appears. Each flower that blooms, each leaf that grows, brings a positive surprise, and he learns to appreciate the journey. This is the secret to a lighter life, doing your best without clinging to a specific outcome. Picture another scenario. You plan a party for someone special, organizing every detail carefully, but something doesn't go as expected. If you're too attached to the idea of perfection, you'll feel disappointed. However, if you accept that unexpected things can happen, you'll find it easier to adapt and even enjoy yourself. By letting go of attachment, you can fully live each experience, even if it doesn't turn out exactly as planned. Life is always changing, and absolute control is an illusion. When we learn to let go of the idea that everything has to go a certain way, we allow life to surprise us. Every situation has its own outcome, and the magic happens when we leave space for the unexpected, for things beyond our control. This process of releasing attachment is liberating and allows peace to emerge, because we're no longer held captive by what could have been. Another example is when we idealize how someone should act. When we interact with people, expecting them to meet all our expectations, we often end up frustrated. But when we accept people as they are, without trying to change them, relationships become lighter. We accept that others have their own qualities and imperfections, which allows us to appreciate every moment together. This acceptance also helps us see the value in differences and learn from them. Letting go of attachment to specific outcomes means trusting that life has its own flow, and that not everything needs to go as planned to be good. When we release control, We learn to see the beauty in unexpected moments and find peace in every experience. With this mindset, our journey becomes more peaceful, and inner peace flows naturally. It's like floating down a river, allowing the current to guide us rather than fighting against it. The next time you do something important, remember, do your best and take care of every detail, but let life flow. By accepting that not everything will go as expected, you'll discover lasting peace, built on the trust that life knows what it's doing. This detachment helps us enjoy every step, without wasting time on worries or rigid expectations, allowing life to flow with lightness and serenity. Second habit, continuous judgment. Many times, we spend our days judging everything happening around us, from small things to the people we interact with. Often we don't even realize it, but we're constantly labeling everything, thinking this is good or this is bad. It's as if our mind is always evaluating and classifying things. While this habit of judging might seem harmless, it actually weighs us down, pulling us further from inner peace, because we're in constant conflict with what is happening. Think of a common situation. You're stuck in traffic, trying to reach an important destination, and suddenly the car in front of you stops for no apparent reason. Immediately, irritation arises and thoughts like, how ridiculous! Why did they stop here? Start running through your mind. This judgment turns a simple delay into a source of stress. The issue isn't the car that stopped, it's the judgment you're attaching to it. By interpreting the situation as a problem, you start to feel anger and frustration. Now, imagine if you chose not to judge this situation. The car stops, and instead of becoming irritated, you simply observe and wait for the road to clear. By not labeling the situation as wrong or bad, you avoid creating a negative reaction within yourself. This allows you to handle the moment more calmly. Suddenly, the traffic is no longer a problem, but simply part of the journey. This practice of letting go of continuous judgment feels like lifting a weight off your shoulders. It allows you to accept things as they are, without needing to battle every detail. Deep down, we judge so much because we want things to happen exactly as we envision them. But life doesn't always follow our plans, and judging every deviation only makes us miss the chance to appreciate the journey. Continuous judgment doesn't just affect our relationship with the world around us, it also affects our relationships with people. Imagine you meet someone for the first time, and right away, you start analyzing how they speak, dress, and behave. Without realizing it, you've already formed an opinion about them, maybe thinking, I like them or I don't like them. But do we really know the full story? Judgment creates a barrier that prevents us from seeing people openly and understanding who they really are. For example, think of someone you know who at first seemed distant or even arrogant. Over time, you might discover that this person is actually very kind and generous, and that their initial behavior was just shyness. Situations like this happen because our initial judgments are often inaccurate. They're based on assumptions, and these assumptions limit our ability to truly know others. When we stop judging everything around us, we open up to curiosity, acceptance, and inner peace. This doesn't mean we can't have opinions or discernment, but rather that excessive judgment builds barriers that prevent us from living with lightness. Judging less is actually an invitation to experience the world more openly and less rigidly. This practice isn't easy, as we've been taught to judge from an early age. But little by little, it's possible to transform this habit into something lighter. A way to start is by observing when judgment arises. When you notice a critical thought, pause and ask yourself, is this judgment really necessary? Often, you'll find that it isn't. By letting the thought go, you'll feel the situation lighten, bringing a sense of calm. Another important point is that constant judgment also affects how we view ourselves. We're often very critical of our own mistakes and weaknesses, which only adds to the weight we carry. When we begin practicing non-judgment toward the world around us, we learn to apply it to ourselves. We start treating ourselves with more compassion, understanding that we don't need to be perfect all the time. Therefore, abandoning the habit of continuous judgment is a practice that brings peace and lightness to daily life. It allows us to see the world with a gentler, more open perspective, accepting things and people as they are, without the need for labels and criticisms. Over time, this practice transforms us, and the inner peace it brings makes life much more pleasant and harmonious. So, does this concept make sense to you? Have you ever found yourself in situations like this, trying to label everything? How about sharing a bit of your experience in the comments? Let's exchange ideas on how this impacts our lives and discover together how to apply this change day by day. Third habit, excessive thinking. Thinking is one of the most useful skills we possess. It helps us solve problems, plan for the future, and understand the world. However, when thinking becomes excessive, it stops being a helpful tool and turns into a source of suffering. Excessive thinking happens when we get stuck in a cycle of thoughts that don't lead us to any concrete solution, but only increase our anxiety and stress. This overthinking usually centers on two things: the past and the future. When we dwell too much on the past, feelings of regret, guilt, or shame often arise. We go over what we said or did, imagining how things could have been different. But this intense reflection traps us in a time that has already passed and cannot be changed, causing us to miss out on the present moment. On the other hand, excessive thinking about the future leads to anxiety. When we constantly plan, predict, and worry about what might happen, our mind creates scenarios that often never even occur. This type of thinking makes us believe we can foresee and control everything, which is not true. The future will always contain unknown elements, and overthinking about it only takes us further from the calm of the present moment. Excessive thinking also impacts our physical well-being. When we are caught in a continuous stream of thoughts, our body reacts with tension and discomfort. An overactive mind can trigger symptoms like difficulty sleeping, headaches, and even digestive problems. This accumulated stress affects our health and prevents us from enjoying what life offers right now. Mental calm isn't just about emotional well-being, it also contributes to our physical health. One way to reduce excessive thinking is to practice being present in the now. When we focus on what is happening at this moment, we give our mind a break and engage with what is real and tangible. Being present is about observing sensations, sounds, colors, and feelings as they happen, without trying to interpret or judge them. In this way, the mind finds a natural rest. Another essential step in reducing overthinking is realizing that not all thoughts are true or useful. Our mind generates countless thoughts throughout the day, but not all of them require our attention. Learning to observe thoughts without engaging with them is a powerful exercise for achieving inner peace. It's like watching clouds drift across the sky. You observe without attaching to any of them. To manage excessive thinking, it's helpful to remember that we are more than our thoughts. When we are stuck in the cycle of overthinking, it's as if we forget that there is a space of peace and silence beyond this mental activity. By becoming aware of this space, we realize that we don't need to solve every thought that arises. We can simply let them pass, allowing inner silence to take their place. Finally, overthinking often stems from a need for control. We want all the answers and to predict every possibility, but that isn't realistic. Accepting that not everything is within our control helps us relax and live more lightly. Over time, this practice teaches us to trust life more and connect with the peace that exists in the present moment, without getting lost in constant thoughts. Fourth habit, comparing yourself to others. From an early age, we are encouraged to compare ourselves to others. It starts in childhood when we see classmates who seem faster, smarter, or more popular. As we grow, this comparison extends to areas like career, success, and appearance. Without realizing it, we're constantly evaluating our lives based on others' standards, as if there were an invisible ruler measuring our worth by what other people have or do. However, this comparison places an enormous weight on our inner peace, making us feel as if we are never good enough. Consider the story of someone who loves playing music. For years, they dedicated themselves to learning guitar, which brought them joy and personal fulfillment. One day, they decide to record a video playing their favorite song, and post it on social media. Soon, they find themselves scrolling through profiles of other musicians, some with advanced technical skills and a large following. Instead of feeling proud for sharing something they love, they start to think their talent is insignificant compared to these other musicians. This thought of "I'm not as good as them" begins to diminish the joy they once felt, and they start to believe they need to be better to feel fulfilled. This kind of comparison is like a silent trap. We don't notice it, but little by little, it robs us of our happiness. Instead of focusing on our own growth, we get lost in what we lack and what others have already achieved. And there will always be something to compare, as everyone is on a different path at different times. When we spend our energy trying to keep up with others, we stop appreciating our own journey and the achievements we've already made. Another place where comparison intensifies is on social media. There, we only see the perfect side of people's lives: trips, smiles, celebrations, and moments of success. This makes our own lives seem dull or less happy in comparison. But what we don't see are the struggles, the hard times, and the insecurities that everyone has. This comparison is unfair because it's based on an incomplete view of others' reality. In truth, nobody shows their entire life, and even lives that seem perfect have ups and downs. When we manage to let go of this habit of comparison, something magical happens. We start valuing who we are, our qualities, and our own path. Every person has a unique story, set of challenges and accomplishments. When we focus on our own story, we begin to see the good things we've achieved and the lessons we've learned. This self-appreciation allows us to recognize what we have and at the same time be kind to ourselves, accepting that we don't need to be like others to be happy. Moreover, when we stop comparing, we realize that others' success doesn't diminish our own value. It's like being in a race where the only competitor is our past self. When we focus on our journey, we begin to see life with more ease and peace. It's not about ignoring others' achievements, but understanding that each person has their own time and rhythm, which makes life so rich and diverse. Letting go of comparison is an exercise in freedom. It means stopping the habit of measuring our worth based on others and finding value in who we are. It's like removing a lens that distorts our vision and finally seeing the beauty and uniqueness of our own life. Each of us has something unique to offer, and when we stop comparing, we find the peace of simply being ourselves. Before we move on to the next habit, let me ask you something. Have you liked this video yet? It really helps YouTube keep showing our content to you, and of course, it lets us keep moving forward on this journey together. So go ahead and give it a like now. It's quick, it's free, and it makes all the difference for us, agreed? Thanks. Let's keep going. Fifth habit, the need to please everyone. The need to please everyone is a habit that may seem harmless, but in reality, it distances us from who we truly are and affects our inner peace. When we strive to please everyone, we end up placing others' opinions and expectations above our own. Over time, this becomes an emotional burden that weighs us down and prevents us from living authentically. This behavior often starts because, naturally, we want to be accepted and valued by those around us. However, this quest for acceptance can easily turn into an excessive need for approval. When we do things to make others happy, even if it goes against our own desires or values, we are giving up our essence. This leads us to act according to what others expect rather than what we truly want or feel. Another issue with trying to please everyone is that it's never truly possible. People have different tastes, values, and expectations, and what pleases one person may displease another. In trying to meet all these expectations, we end up feeling confused and even lost because we're constantly adjusting our behavior to avoid disappointing or causing conflict. This creates a cycle of anxiety and insecurity as we get trapped in the attempt to avoid criticism or judgment. When the need to please others takes over, we lose touch with our own feelings and values. This behavior makes us prioritize others' wishes over our own needs. Over time, it can lead to resentment and frustration, as we feel that we're sacrificing our well-being in exchange for others' approval. Moreover, this attitude often doesn't bring genuine satisfaction, as we're seeking external validation for something that only we can fulfill within ourselves. To break free from the habit of pleasing everyone, it's essential to develop self-awareness and practice self-value. When we understand our own values and priorities, it becomes easier to say no when necessary without feeling guilty or afraid of disappointing others. This process helps us recognize that we have the right to set boundaries and make decisions that reflect who we truly are. Over time, we start to understand that pleasing everyone is neither healthy nor necessary to maintain genuine and positive relationships. It's also important to understand that saying no doesn't mean being selfish or disrespectful. In fact, by setting boundaries, we're respecting both ourselves and others. When we're honest about what we want or don't want, we're building relationships based on transparency and mutual respect. Those who truly value our presence will understand and respect our choices, making the relationships more genuine and authentic. Ultimately, letting go of the need to please everyone brings a sense of freedom and inner peace. We don't need to live according to others' expectations to be accepted. Instead, we find strength and security in our own essence, allowing us to live more authentically. When we set aside the desire to please, we discover a serenity that comes from being at peace with who we are, free from the constant need for approval. Sixth habit: excessive self-criticism. Let's talk about self-criticism, that habit of being hard on yourself for every mistake or flaw. Imagine a person who, every time they make a small slip, spends the entire day thinking about it, blaming, and even feeling guilty. Maybe it's something as simple as forgetting to reply to an important message or making a minor mistake at work. Even though it's a small everyday occurrence, their mind turns it into a big problem, as if one mistake defines who they are. They feel overwhelmed by an impossible standard of perfection they created for themselves. This is the weight of excessive self-criticism. Every small mistake becomes a reason to punish oneself, a constant reminder that they're not good enough. This type of thinking settles in and repeats every time something doesn't go exactly as planned. Instead of moving on, they find themselves revisiting the mistake, wondering what they could have done differently, often creating a negative image of themselves. This mindset creates an invisible prison where every action is met with judgment, leaving no room for forgiveness or understanding. Self-criticism is that internal voice repeating a cycle of self-judgment, as if constantly evaluating one's worth based on every little detail. Even when they accomplish something positive or receive a compliment, this critical voice dismisses the good and focuses on flaws or what could have been better. This distorted view prevents them from feeling satisfied with themselves, as there's always something to criticize. When this pattern becomes ingrained, self-criticism drains their energy and gradually makes them feel like they can't do anything right. Over time, this attitude fosters deep insecurity, making every task seem more challenging and exhausting than it truly is. Even before beginning a new task, they think, "What if I'm not capable?" Or, "What if I make another mistake?" This type of thinking brings anxiety and even a fear of trying, as they anticipate harsh self-judgment if something goes wrong. It's as if they're constantly walking through a minefield, afraid to fail and disappoint themselves again. But what if this person learned to treat themselves with more kindness? What if, instead of criticizing every small mistake, they saw each one as an opportunity to learn and grow? This shift in perspective could be transformative. Little by little, they would begin to realize that they don't need to be perfect all the time, and that making mistakes is part of any learning process. By letting go of excessive self-criticism, they could finally create space to try new things and grow, free from the weight of perfectionism. This practice of self-compassion doesn't mean ignoring one's flaws or avoiding responsibility. On the contrary, it means understanding that they're human and that everyone makes mistakes. Instead of viewing every error as a failure, they start to see it as a valuable experience that helps them become a better version of themselves. This acceptance brings lightness, as they begin to build a healthier relationship with themselves, where self-awareness comes with understanding. Self-compassion is an act of courage. It's the ability to look at oneself with kindness, even when things don't go as expected. When we treat ourselves with compassion, we discover an inner peace that was hidden beneath the constant self-criticism and pressure. This new perspective allows us to move forward with greater confidence and serenity, knowing that, regardless of the outcome, we will be kind to ourselves. And you, have you caught yourself being overly critical of yourself? Maybe it's time to make room for a little more self-compassion, don't you think? Share your experiences in the comments. Tell us where you're from and how you handle these moments. We'd love to hear your story and exchange ideas with you. 7th habit: resistance to what is. Resistance to what is happens when we refuse to accept situations and circumstances as they are. This resistance arises because we want things to go exactly as planned, or for people to act according to our expectations. When things slip out of our control, we feel discomfort, frustration, and even anger. Resistance makes us fight against reality, trapping us in a constant state of dissatisfaction. This habit of resisting what's happening prevents us from living with ease. When we insist that things should be different, we're actually creating an inner battle that we can never win. This is because the world around us is dynamic, full of situations and factors we can't control. By resisting, we spend our energy on an effort that brings no real benefit, keeping us from inner peace. A common example of resistance to what occurs in daily situations, like facing unexpected traffic or a delay to an important appointment. Our mind immediately rejects the situation, generating thoughts like, "This shouldn't be happening," or "This is ridiculous." These thoughts increase our stress and turn a neutral situation into a source of suffering. The mind gets trapped in a cycle of complaints and frustration, without realizing this cycle is self-destructive. When we resist reality, we put ourselves in a constant state of conflict with it. This conflict doesn't change the circumstances, but profoundly affects our emotional state. Instead of just dealing with the situation, we add an unnecessary layer of suffering. What could be a minor inconvenience turns into an emotional issue, because our mind refuses to accept things as they are. This resistance robs us of peace and makes us lose our internal balance. To begin letting go of resistance, it's essential to practice acceptance. Acceptance doesn't mean we agree with everything that happens or that we give up on our goals, but it does mean we stop fighting against what is already real. Accepting a situation helps us handle it more calmly, allowing our mind to stay centered and balanced. Acceptance is an essential step to finding serenity, as it frees us from the pressure of trying to change what's beyond our control. When we accept, we create space to respond in a clearer, more effective way. Practicing acceptance involves observing the situation and allowing it to exist without the need to change it right away. It's an exercise in releasing control and recognizing that not everything depends on us. When we can relax and accept what's in front of us, we start to realize that things often have a way of resolving naturally. Life unfolds more smoothly when we stop resisting it. Acceptance opens up space for well-being and a deeper connection with the present moment. Another crucial aspect is that accepting the present moment also helps us develop greater resilience. Instead of spending energy on resisting thoughts, we can use it to seek solutions or adjust our perspective. This mindset brings a sense of relief and well-being, as we stop carrying the weight of frustration and begin handling situations more lightly. It helps us cultivate a more adaptable mind that sees changes and challenges as opportunities to grow. Therefore, letting go of resistance to what is means opening up to reality with a more flexible and adaptable mind. By accepting what we can't change, we find a peace that comes from within, a peace that doesn't rely on external circumstances, but on our ability to embrace life as it is. When we stop resisting, we become more open, calm, and ready to handle whatever comes our way. In this way, life becomes a more harmonious and fulfilling experience. So that's it. These 7 habits might seem like a normal part of our lives, but in reality, they're like invisible chains holding you back from the peace you're seeking. If you've made it this far, it's because you feel ready to let go of this heavy baggage and allow life to flow more freely. Now, stay aware. Whenever you find yourself judging, trying to please everyone, or being overly self-critical, remember what we talked about here. Ask yourself, am I repeating one of those habits? This simple act of awareness is already a first step toward transforming your relationship with yourself and the world around you. Remember, every small change counts. Each step you take to let go of these habits will bring you closer to true peace. And believe me, this path is lighter, calmer, and within your reach. Whenever you feel the need for a reminder, come back here and review these steps. This content is here to support you whenever you need it. Thank you for being here with me on this journey. Every time you revisit these steps and put them into practice, you are building a lighter, more peaceful version of yourself. It's a journey, and I'm here to walk with you every step of the way. If this content has helped you reflect, imagine the good it can bring to someone you know. Share it with those who need this message. Together, we can inspire a wave of transformation. See you in the next video. May you find the peace you're looking for. Remember, it's always closer than you think.